Right, the clock has ticked over, and I thank everybody who is attending for attending. I appreciate that very much. And we'll start by receiving a
Right.
The clock has ticked over, and
Yeah, apologies. We have apologies from Councillor Nigel Dixon, Councillor Lucy Shires, and I believe Councillor Pierre Boutikofer.
okay, so we've actually received those apologies.
I haven't received any from Pierre, but I have from Lucy and Nigel Dixon.
And do we have any replacements?
We did have Christopher Cushing, however, he's just emailed at short notice to say unfortunately he was not able to attend.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we accept those apologies? Have we had any public questions?
None received.
We'll have a look at the minutes from the last meeting. Anybody have any comments on those minutes?
Sorry, Andrew, just ask you to turn your microphone on. Do you have, are you able to reference those specific items?
Well, there's quite a few actually. I mean, there's one in clause 6 on page 4. It's an issue that I raised about the wording. Let's have a look. I think there was some collaboration with cabinet members. That's mentioned. My colleague Councillor Perry Warren's mentioned it in section 5. Again on page 4. I probably would have expected some sort of comment from the Democratic Services Manager if she were present here
Yeah,
today.
apologies. I'll chase that up and get an answer on those for you.
Yeah, thank you, Matt.
Okay. Any other comments? We approve those minutes?
Yep.
Anybody propose? Thank you, John. Second? Hands up. Georgie seconded.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you wish me to sign those, Matt?
Yes. I'll just note there, we do have that item 4 action arising from the minutes, Andrew, so I'll chase those issues up with the Democratic Services Manager and get back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Matt.
Any other actions arising? Unfortunately, Councillor Dixon isn't here. He made the he stated an update of complaints was central to the role of the committee, and I think we are acting on that today. So, Georgina. Yeah.
In that case, I would appreciate confirmation from the monitoring officer that it falls within the remit of this committee.
Yes, a summary and some information in regard to outstanding code of conduct matters. I've included a summary of those for this financial year up to present and last financial year.
Can I just ask, while we're on this page, is item number 4 something new, or are we going to put this on all committees now?
It was purely requested at the last meeting by, I think it was Nigel Dixon requested it and then other members agreed. So it was, as it stands, it's only on this committee. I think whether it be relevant to other committees or not is entirely up for you members to decide.
Okay, thank you.
Any items of urgent business?
None received.
Declarations of interest? Does any councillor have any declarations of interest? Parish and district members register of interests and officer registration of gifts and hospitality.
Again, this is just to remind everyone that it is available to view in the Democratic Services section. It's not something I think we need to perhaps routinely keep on the agenda. I will speak to Cara about that as whether it's actually a necessary item, because I think everyone's aware of that by now.
I would hope so. That's right. Excerpts of the annual monitoring officer's report. Thank you.
Thank you. Every year, the monitoring officer needs to write an annual monitoring officer's report, which summarises the key parts of the monitoring officer's work from the previous financial year. I completed a report to cover the period 1st of April 2020 to the 31st of March 2021. I have actually only been in post since February 2021, so it was looking back on the previous year. And I've summarised, taken excerpts from that report of those matters which particularly relate to the Standards Committee. So there's a summary of information about the Register of Members' Interest, Gifts and Hospitality. There's matters in regards to code of conduct and general advice to parish councils. So I'm happy to take any particular questions about those areas, but I would let you know that there's a later item on the agenda in regard to the more recent standard complaints. But there's also an annex, Appendix A, which is 1st of April 2020 to the 31st of March 2021, which gives a summary of the Code of Conduct complaints that we received and dealt with within that period.
John.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, sorry, can I just clarify that this is part of the full report that you presented to GRAC? This is the relevant parts that are particularly for the standards issues.
That's correct, but added to it as well is an Appendix A with if you like, to give some additional information to section E of the report. As you're the Standards Committee, I have done a summary of all the Code of Conduct matters within that period.
Right, so Appendix A didn't go to GRAC.
Correct.
Right, okay. Thank you.
I'm new, still fairly new to this committee. Is this a particularly long and distressing list? Or is this quite normal?
It's perhaps shorter than normal because we've had the pandemic, so not as many face-to-face meetings, not so much interaction with members of the public, etc. So it's a relatively shorter list than we might expect in previous or future years. But there isn't anything on that list which resulted in any significant sanction.
Thank you.
Maybe I should already know this, but I just wondered when it's referring to these actions here, is the person who is complained about always notified, or are they only notified if it's assessed that there is something to answer?
They are always notified. In fact, but just by way of information, general procedure is when there's a code of conduct complaint, it's received by myself in the legal department as the monitoring officer. It is the subject member who's being complained of is notified that a complaint has arrived and is given an opportunity to make any response in regard to that complaint. All the information is received and there's an assessment to see whether it needs to go for investigation, and both the complainant and the subject member receive that decision.
Can I ask, when is it decided whether Norfolk ALC deals with the matter, and when is it decided that we deal with the matter? Is that naive? I'm sorry.
And sometimes we liaise with NALC in the course of what we do, but ultimately it's an obligation, it's a statutory obligation that Norfolk District Council monitoring officer deals with not only the matters in regard to code of conduct complaints relating to the district council, but also to all parish and town councils in the district.
Perhaps we should just note now that the leader of Norfolk ALC has recently changed. Russell is now a consultant, and there is now somebody who's taken his place. I think at some future date, I would quite like to ask him to come and see us and explain the role of the Norfolk ALC for people like myself who are a little bit ignorant on exactly where he gets involved and where that line of demarcation actually is. Perhaps that needs a study.
So none of these have been escalated up to the committee to have to make decisions on, have they?
The two periods we're looking at, that's correct. There's been no standards hearing of the standards committee to consider an allegation in the last 2 financial years.
So in possibly then in answer to the chairman's first question, it's obviously not that heavy if it hasn't even got, it's obviously been sorted out before it gets to a committee stage. Is that
Absolutely.
fair enough?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, John.
I think it's generally the case as well that there are few matters that do get escalated. Most matters are no further action. And the ones that have been referred for investigation are either no breach or they have resulted or are going towards a resolution without the need for a hearing.
Andrew.
Yeah, just for clarification, I take it that we're dealing with agenda items 8 and 9 concurrently, are we?
Pretty much,
Discussing, yeah. It seems that we have a choice. We either adopt the the government's definition of bullying as applied to the Home Secretary, which seems to be quite different from the rest of the law that governs the land. So the question I have is, which definition of bullying are we adopting? How transparent is our sieve? I'm not quite sure what tests are applied. So that's an issue for me. And also, when we look at the list, there's a clustering. There's quite a few complaints over both periods involving two particular areas of our district. And this concerns me somewhat, because there seems to be a pattern of behaviour occurring in a certain one particular area of the district. And at what point do we consider that it's a matter not for us, but it may be a matter for outside investigation by the police force, for example? I'd just like to know why there are so many complaints from a given area coming through, resulting in no further action.
Would you like to?
Thank you. I think there were sort of three questions there. We've recently adopted a new code of conduct which gives some information in regard to bullying. There's no one set circumstance which is defined as bullying. It can be made up of all different sorts of behaviours, verbal and physical behaviours. Every matter that comes before us is considered on its own circumstances, facts and merits. It is correct, and historically there do tend to be a few parish or town councils that come before me more than other councils. Sometimes there's long-standing differences of opinions, difficult situations that go on for a while. In regard to my dealings with such things, I have fairly limited powers. So, for example, if it is a matter that there's a potential criminal element to it, because you were talking about an outside investigation, that is potentially for those members of the parish or the town council to take some action upon. My role as monitoring officer relates principally to matters where there's a complaint or issues relating to the code of conduct. So there's, as I've explained, there's that initial assessment process to decide whether there needs to be an investigation. If there does need to be an investigation, that will be done usually by one of my colleagues. And at the end of that investigation, there are recommendations. So it's either no breach found or there's a breach, and any recommendations as to how the parish council could deal with that behaviour could be given. There could be some additional recommendations if there needs to be some, or there needs to be some consideration of outside action, and there could also include some extra helpful information in regard to some governance advice.
In a situation where a town or parish council as an employer has to deal with some complaint about the terms of employment of, say, a parish or town council clerk, how would the complaint proceed in terms of a breach of a contract of employment? Would our monitoring process supersede that procedure, or in other words, would a complainant have to go through our monitoring process before making a complaint under their contract of employment and taking legal action under their contract? And is it possible for the police to be involved at the same time as the complaint is referred to you as the monitoring officer? Is there an order to this or not? That's what I'm wondering here.
Not necessarily, however, if it was something that the police were involved in and there was also a code of conduct complaint, and I knew that the police were involved, I wouldn't want to prejudice any separate investigation. I'm talking quite widely because
General
it's a general
principles.
principles
Yeah.
question in regard to some issue in regard to an employee's contract of employment. That would be something specifically for that particular town or parish council, and it wouldn't be something that the district council would become involved in. They're a separate legal entity. However, if it were an employee of the town or parish council that wished to make a complaint or had an issue in regard to the conduct of an elected or co-opted member, then that is something that would be considered by myself and not by the parish council separately. The requirement is that the district council considers code of conduct complaints in regard to parish and town councils as well as the district council.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for that.
We used to have an independent person, Mr. Oram. Do we still have him? And at what stage is he consulted?
We do have Mr. Oram. He's our independent person. He's extremely experienced in what he does. Although there isn't a requirement under the legislation to consult him as frequently as we do, so we don't just consult him when there's an investigation or a standards hearing. We generally consult him in respect of all code of conduct complaints.
Any more on this subject? I think it's worth noting just how impactful it is on the individuals concerned. I know in parishes that I have been involved in, it is a matter of high stress for people who are actually giving their time for the benefit of the community. And I think that sometimes we lose sight of, and I think some recognition is needed there in the way we deal with these issues. At the end of the day, everybody has the same goals in principle. Is how we arrive at them. It can only be the argument, and it shouldn't get to this. Thank you very much. Right.
You're just asked to receive and note that one. So if you just have a show of hands to show that's noted, and then you can move on to item 9. Okay, yep, duly noted.
Any other business to include update on the complaints that we've been going through anyway? Any other business? I don't think we need to exclude the press and public. Date of next meeting, do we know yet?
I haven't got it open here, but there will be a scheduled date, and I think we'll need to approach that at the appropriate time to see if we have any business to transact. Obviously, if it wasn't for the MO report today, it would have been an even shorter meeting than it actually was. So I think we will see on that one.
And we have a conduct meeting, training next week, is it?
Yes, good reminder actually for anyone here. Yeah, Monday afternoon. That's remote Zoom training for on the code of conduct.
I would urge all members of NNDC to attend. Thank you very much. And on that note, thank you very much for coming, and see you next time.